a number of voices. We're engaging members of Congress. We're talking, to helping whatever we can with RFK and Trump's leadership on this. But I had a somewhat out-of-body experience that kind of hits on what you're getting at. I was sitting across from the member of Congress, and I think it's the exact same issue on obesity, who introduced this Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. Has 150 co-sponsors, and it's to jam government-funded Ozempic. So it starts with Medicare. 80% of people on Medicare, old people, are obese or overweight. So the second this bill is signed, you have open season on all people on Medicare. And then the second something's approved for Medicare, it always goes to Medicaid for lower-income people, because why would an old person be eligible for something but not a poor person in the United States? So that immediately goes to Medicaid. That's the game. And then Medicaid, right, it's 6 years old. It's now being pushed for on 6-year-olds. So the second this bill is signed, $1,600 per patient per month, taxpayer money, which is why Novo Nordisk is the 9th most valuable company in the world right now, this Danish company expecting 90% of their profits from the United States on expectation of this bill's passage. So we're sitting across from him. And I bring these things up. And I bring up a simple question of, why is this one-size-fits-all jamming Ozempic into the average American's arm instead of opening up flexibility to potentially explore regenerative food or exercise or incentivizing those things? Like, it's not even fully anti-drug, but why is this what clinician said this is the cure? Like, this is the one cure, because it's not opening up any money for food or exercise or any other modality that could actually cure the root cause of obesity. And he looked at me fully like serious and said, I'd never thought of that. And I told him that it's being pushed on kids and that there's an aggressive effort where Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, the top obesity researcher at Harvard, was funded significantly by Novo Nordisk and millions of dollars in research grants, and went on 60 Minutes, where the top funder of 60 Minutes is pharmaceutical companies, and said obesity is a brain disease and a genetic. She said that, top Harvard researcher. And she said it needs to be aggressively intervened for kids. And I said there's open season on kids. The guy who introduced the bill, he said, that's not true. I'm going to put in the bill that kids can't use it. I'm like, you'd be going against the FDA guidance on that. You can't do that. I go, you understand, based on the JP Morgan estimates, where they literally presented the estimates of increasing obesity rates at the JP Morgan conference in San Francisco. And all the investors clapped like seals, standing ovation, as they presented a chart on rising obesity rates, showing that as Ozempic increases in prescription rates, obesity in the United States will increase. Unpack that one for me. They show that graph and everyone claps. Because it's a lifetime drug, because it's a crash diet. It's liquid anorexia. It makes you not want to eat. Crash diets don't work, right? And of course, more than 50% of the people that even have insurance funding for it go off of it within 6 months, because it's the highest rate of side effects of any mass drug prescribed in American history. But he didn't know all that. And he looked at me in the eye, the person who introduced this bill that is going to be one of the most expensive bills in American history, the market cap of the 9th most valuable company, the most valuable company in Europe. They passed LVMH, the fashion company, the most valuable company in Europe, rests on this bill. This is the guy that ostensibly wrote it. He said, no, it's a short-term solve. Ozempic's a short-term solve. Look at me right in the eyes. I'm like, no. It literally says there's metabolic issues, and it warns somebody going off the drug. It says you have to take it for life. That's what he did not know that. It wasn't like the corruption is you have Brad Winstrup. If somebody wants to do something, if we want to change the world, email members of Congress, email Brad Winstrup, call his office and say, we think before we jab 6-year-olds with Ozempic, we should fix our food system. This thought literally didn't occur to him. So what's happening with this corruption, what's happening with obesity, with Alzheimer's, is the corruption is like, it doesn't even get to people even understanding it. The boiling frog, it's just obviously we're just going to find a drug, not ask why people are getting Alzheimer's. Obviously we're just going to jam 6-year-olds with Ozempic and not ask why people are getting obese. And then I literally get talking points in the room as he starts thinking about it. Oh, it's hard. Dietary interventions are hard. It's like, what's happening now is hard. Like going to a playground with my 2-year-old son and seeing every kid clearly having issues, clearly dealing with obesity, like 6 years old, seeing processed food all over the playground. Like that, like what's happening now, poisoning our cells en masse is pretty hard. So there are simple ways to do this. If Dr. Fauci in 2020 said COVID has strong metabolic links and we need to harden up our immune system, it's a problem. We're dying 3 times at a higher rate than the Japanese per capita. That's 16% of all COVID deaths are in the US, and we're like 4% of the population. Like this is a warning sign for our immune system. We need to shift the healthcare budget to getting fit, to incentivizing exercise, to fixing and talking to Will Harris and other regenerative farmers and consulting them on how to transform our food system, seeing that the medical system has co-opted what drugs are and what medicine is. Like, it's nothing short of a moral blind spot that food and exercise aren't seen truly as drugs, that they aren't seen as interventions from the $4.5 trillion we spend on medical systems. They do that in Europe. The Italians are 3 times less obese and diabetic than us. I don't think the Italians are more vigorous. I don't think Americans are lazier than Italians. Like, there's something systemic happening where they spend 3 times less per capita on healthcare and 2 times more per capita on food.
And they're living 8 years longer.
8 years longer.
Well, and everybody notices it when you go over there and eat.
Yeah.
You
feel good.
You feel good.
Eat that pizza.
Yeah.
It's like the only place in the world I can eat gluten because it doesn't destroy my gut. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's weird that all these things that you say are so clear and they make so much sense.
Yeah.
It just
and
doesn't
yet
occur.
they're being ignored. Well, it speaks to capture.
Yeah.
Industry capture.
I met with Nancy Pelosi 2 weeks ago. Looked at her in the eyes because, we've been helping RFK, helping Trump, and we should talk about that. I think there's a really, really important societal dynamic happening with that unison. But I'm preparing as much as I can to foster this bipartisan conversation. I can tell you, everyone in the room, right, like, is horrified by these statistics. But every time their staffers are slithering behind them. And the healthcare staffers in Congress are waiting for their next job with the pharma industry or the insurance industry, and they really drive the place and make the bills. But a real problem with the corruption is these people making policies, literally chairs of healthcare committees. The simple ideas you're talking about, and we're trying to express on metabolic health, on this simplicity really of why we're getting sick, it's not being like corruption is like leading them to deny it. It's like they just do not understand. Like these meetings we're doing with, and this hearing we did with Max and Brigham and others, Julian Michaels and so many great people. It literally was giving these ideas to these members of Congress for the first time. There'll be a lot more on this, but it's so simple, but literally letting your lawmakers know. I hear 2 things again and again from meeting with over 40 members of Congress. It's like, I don't understand this, I don't know this, and my phone's not ringing off the hook. If I go against pharma, they're getting all the old people to call and say, don't kill me. Like to me, this issue, why this issue is becoming so resonant is because we're all feeling it. I think it's actually, we're hitting on the most important issue in the country. I think it's why everyone's flocking to books on this issue, why podcasts, why your podcast is the #1 podcast. I mean, I consider I've learned more about metabolic health and healthcare listening to guests on your show than I think Casey's probably learned at Stanford Med School. So it's like people left to their own devices are flocking to this, and we need to make a statement with our politics. This is unfortunately a political issue.
So you were one of the people that helped sort of broker the deal with RFK and Trump and bring the 2 of those together. Tell me how that got started. Tell me how that worked out.